Longlegs, the new serial killer thriller starring Maika Monroe and Nicolas Cage. Some are calling it the next Silence of the Lambs. Is this the most overhyped movie of the year? Welcome back to the Act of Violence channel. My name is Alec. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to talk about Longlegs. I've been aware of this movie for maybe 2 or 3 months. I've seen a lot of internet hype about this movie. So of course, I went last night. I bought tickets around 5 p.m. for a 9:30 showing, and I had to sit in the front row. That's how hyped this movie was. And despite that, that didn't affect my viewing of this movie. But everybody kept calling this movie the next Silence of the Lambs. The next Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs of this generation. It's in the marketing and stuff now, too. And the marketing got super interesting with them offering that whole screening without parents with a bloody nun as your guardian. It's fun stuff. I really like that. I'm not going to talk about any spoilers, but I am going to get into as much detail as I can, and we're going to start with the positives. Maika Monroe stars as FBI agent Harker. I've seen her in 2 other movies, It Follows and Independence Day Resurgence, which I rewatched recently, and it's not as bad as I remember it being. Still not great. Still don't recommend watching that one. It Follows, however, love it. Also rewatched that, and I was completely unaware that she was in this until I went and saw the movie and saw her name on there. I stayed away from trying to watch the trailers. I would occasionally see one pop up on YouTube, and I'd hit skip. I don't want to see this. I was trying to go into this one blind, and I did a pretty decent job with that. Nicolas Cage as, obviously, the serial killer Longlegs. Now, this is a performance that is going to make this movie for most people, I think. Without this wild and crazy and horrifying performance from Nicolas Cage, in all the best ways, I don't think this movie would hold as much weight for some people. I might be one of them, I don't know. If you've ever appreciated a Nicolas Cage role, or if you're like me and you're just a super Nick Cage fan, you've definitely got to check this movie out and do it in theaters. Let's kind of talk about the cinematography and how the movie looks, because I think that's a great positive. It's very dark and bleak, much like Silence of the Lambs or, Twin Peaks or some of those X-Files episodes. It takes place probably in the mid-90s because Bill Clinton's hanging on the wall behind the guy. But this is a very cinematic movie. If anything, it's similar to The Shining in that all the shots are very intentional, you know what I mean? The spaces that are lived in don't look very lived in except for the serial killer's basement area. That's the only place that looks like a truly lived-in area. Now, the other locations, don't get me wrong, look great. It reminds me of Twin Peaks. It's kind of woodsy. There's lots of that old 70s furniture that's left over from, the 70s and early 80s. It's still in there in the 90s. And again, I mentioned how this kind of looks like The Shining. It has those slow and very deliberate shots. It's very beautiful to look at. The music is great too. I was noticing it in several spots. I was like, wow, this music's very, it's really helping this movie along. You know what I mean? When you watch a movie and the music just matches perfectly with what's on screen, and you're like, this is what movie making is about. It's our artists coming together and forming something that just seems like it should be. You know what I mean? And this movie's quiet, but it's not too quiet. It has a lot of spaces without music and without sounds, and that just helps build up the tension. I will say, as I expected, Nicolas Cage is like the shark in Jaws. He very rarely pops up. This movie's only an hour and 41 minutes. I kind of expected it to be a little bit longer. So when things started getting wrapped up, I was like, hold on, what time is it? And again, it's an indie horror thriller picture, right? So an hour and 41 minutes, that's pretty solid. I'm not saying it should have been longer or anything. Let's talk about some of the negatives, at least the ones that I can mention without spoiling things. So I was expecting this movie to be a full-blown crime thriller, not a slasher movie, not a supernatural horror movie. But at the beginning of the movie, there's this sort of element introduced where somebody might be psychic, or, maybe they're just really intuitive. And then that's sort of left in the dust, and it's never talked about again. You sort of observe it, though. And then there's maybe about midway through, and I think the director's talked about this, how he did it intentionally. But about midway through, the movie sort of shifts away from this sort of crime thriller vibe and adds an extra element that I'm interested in, and I like movies that do that, but I just honestly didn't want that from this. And, whatever, that's just me, being nitpicky, right? But I found myself walking away from this movie disappointed, which was a big bummer for me. I love Nicolas Cage. I loved Like the first 30 minutes of this movie, I forgave the one little supernatural element that they put in the movie right in the beginning that's not actually supernatural necessarily. You know, it's intuition or psychic. It's sort of blurs the lines. It's interesting, right? But the first 30 to 40 minutes, I was so hooked into this movie, and then the last half, I don't know. I'm willing to give it another shot for sure, and I don't think it's bad by any means. I definitely see why a lot of people love it, and I'm really glad for its success too. Makes me want to see what else this director's done. But I think all of my disappointment leads back to my expectations. Expectations with movies is such an interesting topic to me. I think they play a huge role if you go into a movie expecting one thing and getting another. Now, sometimes that can be a great surprise because you're expecting something maybe not so great, but I was expecting the next Silence of the Lambs because that's the marketing, and I should have known better. I should have tapered my expectations, but I was like, I was more hyped for this than anything else the rest of the year, which is saying a lot. Because Twisters comes out next week, Alien Romulus, Terrifier 3. There's a lot of crazy, interesting stuff coming out. But this one fell short because of my expectations, I believe. I'll give you an example. Me and my brother were both talking about Terminator Dark Fate before its release. He was very excited. He was interested. He was like, maybe this will be a good Terminator movie. We haven't had one, and he likes Salvation okay. And I like it okay, but, you know, nothing's hit the same since T2. And I'm a Terminator 3 defender. Check it out. But we each went separately to this movie. I thought, oh god, this is going to be another crappy, horrible movie. And because my expectations were literally zero, I had a fun time with Dark Fate. His expectations were like, this is going to be great. He thought it sucked. I thought that was very interesting. And I've always paid attention to that since then. Before I rate this movie, why don't you go ahead and jump in the comments down below and tell me if you've seen this movie. Did you like it? And if you haven't seen it yet, are you hyped? I'm going to give this movie a 3.5 hearts out of 5. I thought it was beautiful to look at. I thought the performances were great. I thought the music was great. I thought it was overall a very well put together movie, a well marketed movie. Some of the plot in the second end fell short for me, but what are you going to do? I still think you should go see this movie in theaters. Give it a shot for yourself. Don't take my word for it. And if you like this video, be sure to check out this one and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Hail Satan!